For decades, the Sackler name appeared on the walls of some of the world's most prestigious institutions: the Met, the Smithsonian, the Louvre, Harvard, Oxford. Sackler meant one of the great philanthropic families in the world. Then a few investigative reporters started asking where the money actually came from, and the name became a fight. At some institutions, a losing one. This week's book explains exactly how that happened. Let's get into it. This is Empire of Pain: The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radden Keefe, our first narrative nonfiction pick on this channel. Outliers, back in week 4, was ideas-driven. No real plot, just arguments and evidence. This one's different. It's a genuine 3-generation family saga, and it reads like one, even though every word of it is sourced and documented. The shape of the book is simple to state and enormous in scope. How one family built a fortune first on Valium, then on OxyContin, and spent just as much energy building a reputation as a great philanthropic dynasty as they spent building the drugs themselves. Keefe's argument, and it's a well-earned one by the end, is that those two projects were never separate. The philanthropy wasn't a side effect of the fortune. It was part of how the fortune got protected. One more thing worth knowing going in: this isn't one unified family acting in lockstep. By the time the reckoning arrives, the descendants split into 2 branches. The side descended from Arthur, who genuinely had no hand in OxyContin, and the side descended from his brothers Mortimer and Raymond, who ran Purdue through the crisis years. Watching those 2 branches try to separate themselves from each other in public, after decades of sharing one name and one fortune's reputation, is one of the more quietly fascinating threads running under the main story. The book starts a generation before OxyContin even exists, with Arthur Sackler, the patriarch, in the sense that matters most, even though he died years before the crisis that made the family famous for the wrong reasons. Arthur wasn't a drug maker first. He was an advertising man who happened to be a psychiatrist, and he basically invented the modern template for pharmaceutical marketing. Full-page ads in medical journals, sponsored research that doubled as promotion, direct outreach to doctors instead of just patients. He used that machine to help make Valium the best-selling prescription drug in America for years running, from the late 1960s into the early 1980s. Keefe's point here isn't that Arthur did anything illegal. He mostly didn't, by the standards of his time. It's that he built the exact playbook his family would later use again at a much larger and more devastating scale for a much more dangerous drug. Arthur died in 1987 before Purdue Pharma, the company controlled by his brother's branches of the family, developed OxyContin. That's a detail the family leans on hard in their own defense, and Keefe treats it fairly. Arthur genuinely wasn't there for what came next, but the marketing machine he built didn't die with him. It got inherited. Part of what makes the book so effective is that Keefe doesn't let the story get simple too early. Arthur isn't written as a cartoon villain, and that actually makes the history more unsettling. He was brilliant, cultured, ambitious, and genuinely important in the history of medical advertising. But the same talents that made him successful also helped normalize a world where doctors could be marketed to like consumers, where medical journals could double as promotional channels, and where prestige could make commercial influence look like public service. That's the bridge the book keeps walking across, the respectable version of the story, and the business machinery underneath it. OxyContin launched in 1996 marketed as a breakthrough, a slow-release formula that Purdue's sales force told doctors was dramatically less addictive than older opioids, because the time-release coating supposedly prevented the euphoric rush that drives abuse. That claim was aggressive. It was central to the entire marketing campaign. And this is the part that turns the book from a business story into an indictment. Internal company documents show executives had reason to know it wasn't holding up in the real world well before they stopped making the claim publicly. Sales reps were incentivized specifically to push higher doses to more patients. Doctors who prescribed the most got extra attention and hospitality from the company. And as overdose numbers started climbing through the 2000s, court records Keefe cites show a family and company leadership more focused on protecting market share and reputation than on the numbers themselves. Once the story started breaking widely, the family didn't respond with silence. They responded with a coordinated public relations and legal strategy, hiring crisis consultants and mounting an aggressive defense in courtrooms and in the press at the same time. Keefe treats that response as its own chapter of the story, not a footnote to it. A family with essentially unlimited resources meeting an existential threat to its name. With the same tools of persuasion Arthur pioneered decades earlier, just aimed inward instead of outward. The last third of the book is the reckoning. Lawsuits, congressional hearings, investigative journalism, and eventually Purdue's 2019 bankruptcy filing, which became its own controversy. A 2021 plan would have let Sackler family members pay into a settlement while receiving broad protection from many opioid-related civil claims, even though they themselves hadn't filed for bankruptcy. That liability shield was rejected by the Supreme Court in 2024, and a new $7.4 billion settlement finally became legally effective in 2026, 5 years of legal fighting after the initial filing. Meanwhile, institutions that had spent decades displaying the Sackler name, the Met, the Louvre, Oxford, Harvard, the Smithsonian, and others, became public battlegrounds over whether that name should remain. Some removed it. Others, including Harvard and the Smithsonian, kept or retained Sackler naming under their own rules and constraints. The moment that stayed with me most isn't a single dramatic scene. It's a pattern Keefe traces across the whole book, and the museums are where it lands hardest. For decades, the Sackler name buying its way onto a wing of the Met wasn't just generosity. It was, functionally, a very expensive form of insurance, buying the family a kind of institutional respectability that made the underlying business questions harder to ask out loud. Nobody wants to interrogate the family whose name is literally carved into the building you're standing in. That worked for a remarkably long time. And then, once journalists and family members of overdose victims started asking anyway, it stopped working almost overnight. Because a reputation built entirely on other people's silence turns out to be very fragile once the silence breaks. That's the whole book distilled into one image. A name on a wall, meant to make you stop asking questions. And what happens once people finally don't? Rating. Empire of Pain gets an ace. This is a different kind of verdict than I give a novel, and I want to be straight about that. I'm not rating this on did I enjoy it. I'm rating it on whether the reporting holds up and whether it changed how I see something. Both are true here at the highest level. Keefe's sourcing is exhaustive. Court documents, depositions, family interviews on multiple sides. And he's fair to the family in ways that make the case against them land harder. not softer. Because he's not stacking the deck. This won the Bailey Gifford Prize for a reason. Who's this for? Anybody who's ever wondered how the opioid crisis actually happened at the institutional level, not just the personal one. Anybody who likes a true story with the narrative pull of a novel. And honestly, anybody in medicine. This book is uncomfortable reading for anyone who's ever prescribed a controlled substance. In the most useful way, a book can be uncomfortable. Copies linked below if you want to read along. Amazon Associate, I earn from qualifying purchases. 7 books down, 45 to go. And our first real narrative nonfiction pick. If you've read this one, or you're in medicine and this hit differently for you, I want to hear about it in the comments. Next week, we're staying in nonfiction, but going somewhere completely different. When the Air Hits Your Brain by Frank Vertosik Jr., a neurosurgeon's memoir about learning to operate on the human brain. Grab it and read along. Subscribe if you're still with me. See you in the next book.